I came across your profile and I noticed that you're in EdTech.
Yes.
And you're not only in EdTech, but you're in K-12 as well. So you're kind of connecting the two, from what I
Yep.
understand. So it'd
Yep.
be good to maybe, yeah.
That's my jam.
Yeah, yeah, you've been doing it for 10 years as well. So it's not like this is something new to you. So it would be good to just starting off kind of understand a bit more about what exactly you're doing and
hmm
how you fell into it.
Yeah. So I started as a teacher. I taught middle school and high school, grade 7 through 12 in the US. And I taught business education. And in the US, business education can be very tech, it can be very business, it can be a mix of both. Mine was very tech heavy. So my classroom was a computer lab. So I had a one-to-one environment. This was like in the mid to late 2000s when that wasn't super common, and super old school desktop computers with the deep monitors and the big old stacked towers. So long story short, using technology as a learning tool always became, it was natural to me. I was always kind of the tech person too, even in college. So yeah, long story short, that's what got me into the ed tech realm.
Yeah, if you're talking about the like mid or the early 2000s, I remember very well when I was in school from secondary from 2000 to 2006, and you have a computing class, but I can only imagine. I mean, I've got my niece who's a lot like, younger than me, and I see that they're embracing technology a lot more than we did, and you've been the transformation. You went from schools and helping teach and stay on that kind of tech side of things. What kind of made you take it to the next level and start helping companies and schools come
Yeah, it
together?
was completely accidental. It's one of those like random life things that just happens. I I didn't intend to leave the classroom, but my husband got into grad school, we moved, and there weren't any teaching jobs at the time. And I tell people that now amidst the teaching shortage. And they're like, what? And I'm like, you have to remember this was during the economic crash. I have a very specific couple endorsements. So there's usually only one or two teachers in the school, and they could be there 30 years waiting for them to retire. So I had, when I was in college, actually, I worked as an intern for a personal finance curriculum. So when we moved, I went back, started working for them again doing curriculum development. We started integrating a lot of technology into the curriculum because it was right about that Web 2.0 time, like early 2010s, and decided that that's what I really loved. Started looking at grad school programs for tech integration. And right about that time, a job came up for a technology integration specialist in Bozeman, where I live, for a regional service center. Got the job, did that. So I was supporting about 80 school districts in Southwest Montana with anything and everything tech integration. And then went off, started my consulting business. And really, my goal when I started my consulting business was to provide instructional technology support to schools, and specifically smaller rural schools. I live in Montana. We're huge. We're the fourth largest state in the US, but we only have a million people in the whole state. So by far the majority of our schools are super small. And when I say super small, it's when you mention a small school in other states, they're like, oh, so you have like 3,000 kids? I'm like, oh, no, like 100 kids.
Wow.
Maybe 150 kids K 12 in a lot of the schools, maybe 200 kids K 12 type of thing. So I knew that there was little chance that those schools and those teachers would have instructional technology support. They have a hard enough time getting the technical support that they need. So that was really my goal. Through that, got some good connections, got lucky, started doing a lot of work with K 12 ed tech companies. And yeah, that's what kind of led me here.
Nice. What exactly, how do you help the edtech companies in particular? Because I know that there's quite a few people that I'm connected to that are in edtech. We work with edtech founders, so it'd be good to understand how you're helping them,
Yeah.
I guess, get into these schools.
My wheelhouse is the instructional side. And again, using technology as a learning tool. So my support to ed tech companies is anywhere from training on their product. So providing the instructional focused training on their product and going beyond the click and point training. We're not just teaching how do you use that product. We're teaching how do you embed that product into your curriculum and instruction. So doing a lot of both in-person and on-site and virtual professional development, also building asynchronous training content for them. I do a lot of work with that, building community ambassador programs around that asynchronous training content. So creating communities around the product, online community development. What else? I do a lot of work even with product teams. I've been completely embedded in certain products where I have like one-on-one meetings with their product director where I'm going through and telling them like, this is going to work, this isn't going to work, like this is what you need to think about to add that instructional connection, making sure the classroom and the teacher and the student are seen in that product, right? Like kind of bridging that gap between tech and education. I also do product reviews for ed tech companies where I kind of go through and just review their product and say, hey, this is, you're missing this feature. This feature I'm not sure would be effective or needed anymore, or whatever it is. UI, looking at how many clicks it takes a teacher to get somewhere. That's super important when you're a teacher and you've only got 50 minutes, especially middle school, high school teachers in the US, you typically have less than an hour with your class. If you've got to do 5 clicks just to get one thing done in that 50 minutes, that's a waste of instructional time, right? So kind of evaluating that. Yeah, other things as well, but those are kind of the big buckets that I live in. Lately, I'm doing a lot of work with AI, as you can imagine,
Yeah.
helping both educators and ed tech companies unpack AI, helping tech companies figure out AI strategy for both their product and their professional development.
Interesting. So what you're saying is that you're mainly going into these organizations and helping them with the stickability of their software, their
Yes.
solution.
Yep, that's a good way to describe it. It's the making their product sticky with teachers. If it's sticky with teachers, it's sticky with students, right?
Mm.
Most, I would say most, if not all, K-12 ed tech products are completely dependent on the teacher to get that product in the hands of students. So bridging that gap and trying to narrow down, teachers have very little non-instructional time. So if a product has a huge learning curve or a huge entry curve, I guess we could say, then the likeliness of that teacher using it, unless that product has the most clear effect on either instruction, curriculum, learning, or saving them time. But the problem is there's products that have that, but aren't showing it to teachers in a way to get their attention within that little tiny time span that you have with teachers, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So I
makes
always
a
say,
lot.
you've got kind of like 3 stages of making a product sticky, right? You've got onboarding, adoption, retention. I can help all across the board, but really that onboarding is so key. And that's where the professional development, the asynchronous training content comes in, right? If you don't nail the onboarding step, you never get to adoption. If you never get to adoption, that school, that teacher, whoever's making the financial decision isn't going to renew that product if the product isn't being used, right? So it's
Mhm.
kind of like looping around the life cycle of the product to make sure that the teacher finds value in it. If the teacher finds value, they're going to use it. The usage reports, when it gets to the district admin level, are going to show that that product is getting used, and it's not, that product's not going to get put up against the budget chopping block.
Yeah. Okay. So this is quite fascinating because we've got a couple companies that work in the specifically in the K-12, K-1 to K-12 kind of space. And I know that it can be a tough market even to just get into and get someone to start using your product or solution. Then that's just the first step of the journey. What you're saying is that once you're
Yep,
actually in, it's all about adoption and it's about making sure that the onboarding steps and processes are clear, easy to use, it sounds like. And that's what helps them to get adoption. That's what helps the senior board look at it and see this as a product that they need to continue investing in because it's reaping the dividends, let's say.
exactly. Yep, 100%. If you're not helping the teacher see the value in the product, they're not going to use it. They have very little instructional time. They have even less non-instructional time. So they have to find the value in that product. And that's that key onboarding step, is showing them the value. If they don't see the value, they're not going to dig into it farther to get to the point, the adoption point where they're using that product effectively.
Yeah. No, I've had clients who said like, look, we make the sales, but then it just doesn't get adopted by the teachers, by some of the products is for the parents to use as well. And because of that, it's like, yeah, it's a great win. There's some investment and they make, you know, a good success of it in the front end. But then naturally, if it's not being utilized, it's not going to be used. So are there any examples or before and after scenarios that you can help me understand how you have helped like improve the onboarding experience? Maybe some things
Yeah.
that, people that are outside of it would just generally miss.
Yeah. Well, it really depends on the product. It really depends on the customer. But in general, professional development is absolutely key. If you are not, no matter how simple, easy, no matter how much you see the value in your product and you think it's simple and easy, you have to provide that training to the teacher level to get them to see that value and how simple and easy it is. That seems so simple, but is lacking in the majority of products I see for K 12 tech. They just totally skip over the professional development. I tell every ed tech company I work with, your professional development needs to be wrapped into the cost of your product. It needs to be all inclusive, right? Because if you make it optional, a lot of schools are going to make it optional, right? They're not going to pay that extra for the professional development. Fortunately, I've seen it happen time and time and time again. Actually, I have a company I'm working with right now where they are literally having to go back and basically train all the customers that didn't buy professional development at the company's cost because their usage was so low in the schools that didn't buy the professional development and didn't get trained, right? So they're seeing that huge effect on everything because of it. So I would say that's number one. You've got to have that training aspect. Number two, it's all about relationships and community. I mentioned I do a lot with like community ambassador programs and building online communities. You have to have a place for teachers, educators to go to ask questions, get ideas, talk to other educators, create that community around your product is really really key. So I could go on and on and on about different things, but I would say that those are really the two wins that really when you look at it are fairly easy to do, that have a lot, you get a lot of bang for your buck as a
Exactly.
product.
I'm a big believer in community. We have seen a lot of success with LinkedIn groups because a lot of the times traditionally companies come to us and they have grown their business through referrals, they've done some work, and because customers like it, they get referred. But when they want to take control of their own customer acquisition, they want to, get out in front of the right people, and they make the mistake a lot of the time in that they just go out and blast everyone with a message about how great their product is without taking that first step of getting people engaged. And one of the best ways to engage people is through community. What are some of the how do you go about that community? Is there a certain platform you use? Is there a certain way you start getting people to engage in the group?
Yeah. Well, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, go for it.
I was just gonna say, try to. That's always the first question. Is okay. Well, we want to build when we talk about an online community specifically. We want to build on what tool do we use, and I try to get them to back up and define your goals and your purpose of the community first. That's then going to drive whatever tool you're going to use. Fortunately, there is no that I'm like, yes, absolutely, this works for every single product, every single company. This is going to meet your needs. We go round and round with Facebook groups, have a ton of pros and cons. The pro is that people are already there. They're scrolling Facebook at night, right? So that your information from your community, your online community is going to pop up automatically, but lacks the features and functionalities when they get to a point where they do get a large amount of people and really do want to grow and have different threads of conversation. That's where Facebook groups end. That's where we go and look at more like a Mighty Networks is a pretty popular one. A few different companies I work for use Mighty Networks that has like a much more full functional community in it. Yeah, so that's along the lines of specifically having an online community. That's kind of where I try to drive them. Then you've kind of got the other bucket of like that what I'm talking about, like the ambassador program. The two go hand in hand, right? Your community needs to drive your ambassador program. Your ambassador program needs to drive your community. You have to have some asynchronous online training content to build your ambassador community. So that's usually kind of step one. And again, backing up, setting really clear outcomes and goals of what they want out of that ambassador community that then drives the building of that online training content.
Help me understand when you talk about ambassador community, what do you exactly mean by that?
Yeah, well, you would recognize it for a lot of companies have like certified educators or champion trainers, or they might call them ambassadors or certified ambassadors. Usually there's some sort of, you hit some sort of level as you work through what we call like learning pathways. You can go as far as you want, you can keep going. There's different levels. You usually get a badge if you reach a certain point. I'm a big fan of open badging. If you follow me on social networks, where it's not just a picture, it's not just an image file, it's a badge that has metadata attached to it that shows what did that person do to earn that badge, how many hours did they put in, what did they accomplish. You can even like link to portfolios and different creations they made as part of that process. That's what I mean by a community ambassador program. So it's usually people working through online, and it can look a bazillion different ways, but this is just a typical example. People working through online training content, hitting different badges. You can get up to, the train. It's usually like the trainer or ambassador level, where then you have the opportunity to potentially be a spokesperson for the company and go present at conferences and talk about how you as an educator use that product in your classroom or in your school or in your district. And then also, again, I told you that ambassador program needs to drive the online community. Those ambassadors and champions become the leading voices in the community as well. Does that answer your question about kind of what I mean by community ambassador program?
Yeah, that's awesome, Lindy. That's given me a lot of food for thought, even just from our own initiatives and what we do. So I can see how that can incentivize people to really and reward, right? So that's why it's incentivizing because they're getting something at the end of it, and it's whether it's kind of social proof status, but just something that can demonstrate that you've kind of put in the hours into the community makes you feel that you're being recognized, and I think that's a really
Exactly. You'd be amazed how far recognition goes in education, because education is typically lacking in recognition at the teacher level. So that's what I try to stress to companies that I work with. Recognize your teachers, recognize your users, recognize those champions and ambassadors, right? The other important key part there I try to stress when we're outlining their ambassador program and their community program, whatever you want to call it, is exclusivity, right? Make people feel special, right? So, and you get different things when you get to different levels. So, one of the companies that I've helped build their ambassador program for the last about 10 years is, now they have different swag levels. So, if you hit champion educator, you get this. And then if you hit champion scholar, you get this. If you get all the way to the top of champion trainer, you get some additional swag and different perks and things, right? You're making people feel recognized, exclusive, special, which is lacking in so many parts of education. So I feel like that's one of the reasons that those programs are successful.
yeah. I think people they don't always appreciate the little things, and typically it's the small things that make the big difference.
The devil's in the detail, right?
Really is, man. I worked in the events and exhibition space, and there was a lot of people giving out swag, and those were usually the most popular stands, even though there were little things that you could buy anywhere.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
the act of generosity
It's
that makes.
amazing how far swag goes. Stickers, even just stickers at
Yeah,
EdTech
it doesn't have to
conferences.
be anything audacious. Yeah, it's just it can a good old sticker can do it can go a long way. It's crazy. Okay, cool. So in terms of the onboarding you've got, the communities you've got as well, is there any other areas that you feel that specifically edtech or more maybe the schools themselves are maybe struggling with most that you're seeing because you're kind of in it, and maybe there's some things that other edtech founders are unaware of that are maybe it's important for them to pay attention to, because a lot of the ones that come to us, for example, they're looking to gain market share. They're looking to get in front of more people. But it sounds like even this community, even this onboarding process, can help them um, to increase the amount of advocates that naturally will spread, because usually, people know people. But is there anything that you see that's lacking, or that you feel that needs, that people don't pay too much attention to in the space?
Well, I would say if you're a K 12 ed tech company, you need to have educators on your staff, number one, or bring in people like me to help, third parties to help bring in that educator perspective. If you look at your entire product team and there's no education background there, nobody has classroom teaching experience, no one's worked in a school before, that's a problem. Then you need to get them some third party help, or you need to hire someone, if possible, that has classroom experience to bring in that perspective. I would say that's number one. Number two, you need to understand that, like most things in life, education, especially, I would say, I come from a US perspective. I do work internationally too. Most of my work is in the US, quite a bit in Canada too. Lacking resources is time and money. We talked about how teachers have basically no non-instructional time. Budgets, we know it. We've got the ESSER cliff in the US, if you've heard that. They're getting tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. But at the same time, we've got technology like AI that's becoming more prolific and more expensive at the same time. So it's a struggle. I would say I cannot tell you how many times I get messages from K 12 ed tech companies that are looking for a magic button, the easy button, like the Staples commercials, right? I don't know if they have those commercials still, but remember the easy button, I just want the easy, press that button. They're looking for the easy button to drive sales, and that does not exist. You have to put in the time to build the community, build the relationships. It's all of sales is all about relationships, and show the value in your product. And there is no magical shortcut to make that happen. There are things like community programs and building community that really help. PD, all the things that I've talked about help, but it takes time. It takes human manpower to make that happen, to build those community programs, to build those relationships. No easy button. No easy button to get sales. I've actually seen the opposite happen, that if companies try to take the easy button to get sales, that it kind of backfires and has a not great look on your brand and your product. Like certain sales tactics or immediately going straight to the sale are one of the biggest sniffers out. Is that a word? Sniffers out. Just if you know me, I like to make up words. They sniff out BS. I can't think of a better word for it, right? So, like, those types of certain sales tactics are just not going to work in K 12 education. So don't want to call anybody out or name anything specific. You could probably guess some of the tactics that I'm referring to.
Yeah, yeah, we wouldn't want that, Lindy, but I get where you're coming from. I want to ask one more question on community, and then I want to move into, I think one of the other questions I have is around AI, because I'll be remiss if I don't ask about AI, because you're working on it and it's on the top of everyone's mind. Outside of, so you've got experience with building engaging communities. So you mentioned advocates, completely get that, and I think you've given a good description as to why that's important and how you can get that done and incentivize a program. You talked about the community itself being a place where there's lessons for people to learn. Outside of that, is there anything else that you find that helps to create an engaging community? So we've got our lesson, we've got our advocate program. Is there anything else that you find that typically helps to get the community buzzing?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I have any like magical insights about this. I would say do not underestimate the power of social media and of events, getting in front of educators at events. To hit on the social media aspect, TikTok is wildly underrated and underused by ed tech in general. And I am guilty of this. I go through waves. terrible at video creation. It's one of my goals for years to get better at it. I'm getting there. I actually made a TikTok video last night. I've gotten to the point where my motto in life is just do it. And I tend to be a perfectionist, and for a long time I let that hold me back from making videos because I was like, I don't have the skills and equipment to make these like super professional videos. And now I'm like, fine, you know what? I want to get the message out. So it's just me talking into my phone, type of thing, or usually the TikTok videos that I'm making, like the one I made yesterday. So anyway, point being, I'm also something I'm trying to get better at and leverage TikTok in particular more. There's a lot. I think yesterday I was tagging my video on TikTok, and the teachers of TikTok hashtag has like millions of views on it. So it's growing. I've been on TikTok for several years, and even just when I started a few years ago, the teacher talk community was pretty small. And I'm seeing more ed tech companies and ed tech influencer type people kind of come on TikTok doing TikTok lives. If you haven't been on TikTok recently, I don't know, the TikTok live thing has just exploded. And like things that you would never imagine that people would be like, you're going to watch this? Like, just to give you an example, for some reason, the algorithm, I'm an animal lover. So maybe this is why the algorithm brought me to this woman who has a pig named Homer who lives inside. It's an inside pig. And it's not a small, like pot-bellied pig. It's like a pretty, it's not a huge, huge pig, but it's a pretty darn big pig named Homer. So just go on TikTok and search Homer the pig. I'm sure you'll find it. And she does like constantly, I swear, every time I'm on TikTok, which, once an evening or something, maybe over lunch, I'll pop on and see what's going on. Her TikTok live pops up of her reading to Homer. That was what I saw, I think, last night. She was reading to Homer. So my point is, if TikTok live audience reading to a pig named Homer, imagine what you could do as an educator to help other educators and just answer questions and share and shoot off ideas and talk back and forth. Again, it's that community. You can do that in many different ways. It doesn't have to be a TikTok live. I'm just seeing TikTok lives become super, super popular because they're accessible. They're on our phones. We as humans are always on our phones. We could go on and on about the pros and cons of that, but it's the reality. So anything that's an app that's accessible on our smartphones is going. And again, it's like what we talked about with the Facebook group. It's already in your face. You're already scrolling TikTok. It's there. I actually have a colleague. He's from Montana, but he teaches in Wyoming, and he does his kind of thing is helping students learn how to leverage AI better to help them with their work. And really, I think a lot of his audience is college level, like higher ed level. But he does every week, pops up on my TikTok, his like homework hour. At a certain time, it's like every Wednesday night, he does this AI homework hour where he just answers questions of like, oh, and just, fields thoughts and ideas and questions back and forth. So that was a long-winded way to answer your question, but that's just kind of the thing that I'm seeing right now as like a really untapped market to like build that community, build relationships.
Yeah, yeah, I've been experimenting with TikTok as well over the last couple of years, and you get a significant amount of reach from it. And it's really interesting the stuff that goes on live. For me, what I was fascinated by was there's people in the UK especially, and they're just doing wholesale toilet paper. Yeah, you've seen them ones as well. They're just selling like uh
If you can make toilet paper interesting, you can make anything interesting and grab people's attention on social media. Also, like the ASMR thing, that's been years now, been a big thing, but I'm starting to see now. It used to just be videos on TikTok of people doing like tapping, squeezing things and tapping on things. Now I'm seeing the TikTok lives of like live ASMR things.
it's yeah. Everyone, I guess that's the beauty of niches. So is you just got so many people that have interest in so many things that you didn't even think was a thing.
Like Homer the Pig. Yes, didn't
Yeah,
think that
like
was a
Home of
thing.
the Pig. Exactly, Lindy. So I'm gonna
To
check
add
out.
one more thing to that, though, I would say that I mentioned like two not huge insights, magical insights to build community and build relationships, social media and in person events. In person events are expensive. A lot of, especially more startup companies, don't have the funds to do that. That's okay. Like, work up to that. Be really, really targeted at the ones that you hit with the bit of budget that you have. Don't feel like you have to go to every single conference and every single event. If you don't have the funds for those in-person events, virtual conferences are becoming a big thing. I do a lot. I just did one last night. I did a hour webinar for a global virtual conference. Super simple. Like, I just walked into my office right here and did my thing, right? It didn't cost me anything but a few hours of my time. And if you don't have the funds for those in-person events, so the virtual events, as well as like really hitting into the social media, the online, having an online community, or even online community. If you can't afford a platform for an online community, but their Mighty Networks is super, super affordable, but I know it's still out of reach for some startups. TikTok's free. YouTube. YouTube Shorts is becoming a big thing. Those are all, they require manpower, but you don't have to pay for the platform themselves.
No, I like your point, and I think it's been a thread throughout. It there's an element of manpower. Of you need to put the effort in. One of the things we've explored with as well is there's LinkedIn Live events, but you've also got the LinkedIn roundtables, which are like, I don't know if you remember that platform, and it was like it boomed during COVID, where it was just people on audio and having
Yes.
conversations.
Yes.
I can't
What
remember
was
the
it
name.
called?
Yeah, yeah, it's tip
I
of
know
my
what you're
tongue.
talking about.
Yeah, yeah. They've got that version on LinkedIn. I think those types of environments is better that sometimes better than LinkedIn Live because you're or webinar style format because you're just speaking at an audience. Whereas if you've got people engaging and asking questions, like you said, you start to build that community, that sense of people are starting to communicate with each other. And if you're that source of communication and connection, then there's value in it. And if you're providing value, then people come and you get the
Yep,
attention. So no matter the platform,
exactly.
Facebook.
As you were talking, I thought of another, not untapped, but definitely I would say maybe a bit untapped in K-12 EdTech, particularly podcasts. I've heard just in the last week, I'm a huge podcast person. I've always got my earbuds in, walking the dog, doing the dishes, listening to something. I just in the last couple of weeks have heard stats of the millions of people tuning into podcasts and how huge and how popular podcasts are getting. You can, depending upon the quality that you want, you could spend a lot of money, you could spend $0 on a podcast, really, where you want to hit along that quality spectrum. And something I've been looking in, I've been wanting to start a podcast for forever. It's a matter of finding the time, whittling out the time to do it. But one thing I'm looking at is AI generated podcasts. Now, this is controversial. I have a couple people on my social media that every time I post something AI, they feel the need lately to pop in and go, "Oh no, we should be careful with that," or "This isn't a way that we should be using AI." The video I made on TikTok last night explains why that's not my philosophy. I take a very different philosophy, but we won't go into that right now. I think there's huge power in tools like Notebook LM is kind of leading the charge with the audio generated podcasts right now, and they just made it where you can customize the content. So my problem is lack of time. I'm pretty much a one woman show, and like I said, just wanting to do a podcast, just haven't got to the point to figure out like all the nitty gritty and just make it happen. I started a book, A Teacher's Guide to AI, and I finally, this is like 2 years ago, I've come to the conclusion I am just never going to finish the actual book due to a variety of factors. Number one being my body just does not cooperate with me being in front of my computer as much as I need to be in front of my computer in order to get the book out. And I have one book, so I know the commitment and time to take. So I pivoted and I posted on LinkedIn like maybe a month ago, "Hey, I just realized this is never going to happen, but I have a ton of good content. It's not polished and ready for a published book, but I played around with uploading that to Notebook LM and maybe generating some audio summaries of my chapters and things and pushing that out via audio. I am not going to claim that my audio generated podcast, if I do that, is going to become a number one podcast or anything like that. But at least I'm getting the information to teachers in an accessible, easy way and in a way that they can, again, walk the dog, do the dishes, driving to pick up the kids from school, all those things that we do where we can be listening. I hear from educators and me myself, I'm the same way. Those are important parts of our day to kind of get that information via audio. We're used to be more like blog driven, written work. We're now moving more video and audio as humans.
Yeah, I think that the every character has their own way of consuming information. So for some people, it's podcasts. Other people probably don't listen to a podcast in their life, but they'll read a good article. And for others, yeah, they'll do neither, but they'll
No,
read.
you're hitting the nail on the head though, that the ultimate goal, if you have the resources as a K-12 ed tech company, is to have your content in as many varieties of sources as you possibly can. And guess what? AI is making that way easier than it ever used to be. I've been playing around with tools like HeyGen. DID is another one where it's an AI avatar tool. If you haven't explored it, AI avatars have come an incredibly long way. I made an AI avatar of myself, and what it does is it maps your mouth movements. And honestly, you wouldn't know unless you were really, 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 really paying attention. And it even sounds like me because it takes my voice, maps my right. But then here's the even cooler part is I took it and I said, okay, now translate this to Spanish in a minute. It's on my LinkedIn. If you actually, I think I shared it on multiple social channels. If you want to go see my Spanish version, and I had a post where I shared the English version and then the Spanish version of my. It was a video clip from a podcast of me. I do not speak fluent Spanish. I speak un poco español, and this is me talking like completely fluently in Spanish. I sent it to my husband, and my husband's like, "Your Spanish has come a long way."
There you go.
Because it's that realistic, honestly. So that's where AI is taking us. It's leading us to the point, and that's where I'm really trying in my work as well to model and lead how we can now take one piece of content and have it written form, but not only written form, written and then easily translated to other languages or different reading levels, and then put that into an audio form, put it into a video form using an AI avatar, and letting people choose the way that they want to consume information that best works for them.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's really important because we have this, you know, a lot of people they feel that something won't work because they don't do it. And that's not natural. That's not necessarily the way. It's kind of like a fallacy. It's kind of that's what your mind will tell you, but in reality, everyone has their own way of doing things. And once you understand that, especially if you're working very hard, like you did on your book, to produce what we I call that like a pillar stone of content, then it's just a very easy job, especially with AI nowadays, to repurpose that into images, into infographics, into audio files, and into video now with your in multiple languages now.
Yep. Repurpose. That's been a key to marketing for a long time. It took me a long time to learn that as someone marketing my own services because my background isn't in marketing, but that's been a key. Like repurposing content has been kind of the key of marketing for years. But the key difference now is, like you said, the AI piece. That's not only making it easier to repurpose content, but making it easier to repurpose customized content, like in different languages.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was doing some crazy stuff where, you want to get in front of, for some of my companies or clients I work with, they want to go out to enterprise clients. And one of the cool ideas I had, and maybe this can be done in the school sector as well, I don't know as much about how they operate, is that you've got the end of year reports that I would guess, most people are not reading the long end of year reports that the company releases company wide. Maybe the C level execs, but yeah, as you go down. And I uploaded it into the Google LLM as a podcast. And I thought that, and you can write, summarize this report specifically for people in marketing, specifically for people in sales or operations or whatever. And then you can actually provide, again, a summary for them to share with their team of a podcast that speaks for 10 minutes on their year end. And then what I did was just throughout, they just promote like a whatever product it is that I'm promoting on behalf. So it's kind of like you're being very creative with the way you try and get your message across and at the same time try and add value at the same time. But the world is your oyster. With AI, I truly believe it's now a limitation on creativity that is the only factor with resources and knowledge. You might not know how to design. You might not know how to be a copywriter and write really well. That's been removed. Now it's just your ideas. What ideas are you coming up with? They can be executed now. I think that would be a great way to kind of end this on, which is just you mentioned a few. Like I can tell your because I mess with AI quite a bit, and you've named some companies that I know that from it you've gone down the rabbit hole of AI a bit. What specifically are you seeing in the education space as the use cases for AI? Um,
Great question. Overall, AI is being severely underutilized and undertrained, and the research and statistics back that up. That's not just me blabbling my opinion out there. I just saw a statistic. I think it said like 60 some % of teachers still have not had any AI training. And we are, by the way, it's November of 2024. I don't know when this is going to get released. We're exactly 2 years into ChatGPT being released. It was released November of 2022. And it's over 60% of teachers, I think this was US specific, have received no training on AI. So if they've received no training, there's a very small amount of that 60% that are going to grab a hold and start using AI for themselves, with their students, having conversations with their students about it on their own with no training, right? So, very small group of educators is my point that's really using AI. What I'm seeing though as really great uses is like School AI is one of my favorite tools. They have a tool called Spaces, and it's basically allows teachers to create what's like a custom GPT where you design it's like a walled garden around how that AI is going to interact and help guide students to the learning. Love that. Magic School is taking the world by storm in terms of especially their teacher tools of like rubric generators and customized content generators. What I would say where we are really missing the mark in education right now, I do a whole session on this, like the most underutilized use of of AI in education right now is to generate customized content for students or allow them to generate themselves, teach them how to generate themselves. Take a piece of content, adjust it to your reading level, translate it to the language that you need, and even connect it to any interest that you have. We're doing a poor job of training teachers that this is possible and how to do it safely and securely with students. So it's not trickling down to the student level.
that is such a good idea. Yeah, because just looking back at school, you'd have interest as a kid. I was into games. And if you can relate mathematical problems to Halo, for example, which was one of my favorite games, then I'm going to be far more intrigued by what the
Yep.
answer is because it's just
And what's
natural.
Halo with my generation, by the way, as well. Must be the close, good old elder millennials. What's the game now? Fortnite, Minecraft, depending upon the age of the students. That's exactly what I try to get across to teachers. And I just did this in a training a couple weeks ago with teachers. I said, tell me what your students are interested in. What did they say? Fortnite. I said, okay, give me a topic. And it was like Revolutionary War or something. And I went in and said, explain the Revolutionary War. And it was something a little more specific to that. That's a good topic when I'm talking to a person from the UK.
No, no, we
Anyway,
know about it. You know what?
US history.
Just need a
So I said,
research on it.
explain the Revolutionary War to me in regards to Fortnite. And I gave it a little more specific, like age of students, that kind of stuff. And bam, it spit it out and connected Fortnite to the Revolutionary War.
That's crazy.
And yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like we have a relevancy issue in formal education, and that is such a great way for a teacher to get over the relevancy challenge. And the majority of teachers don't know that that exists. And I think that's so sad and unfortunate for teachers and for students.
I think those statistics you mentioned are probably worldwide for every single type of company, industry, organization, person. And I think if you went into what is it called, Pareto's principle, 80/20, I think out of that 60%, only 20% are really invested in it. The rest have seen it, have come across it, haven't really started utilizing it in their day to day. I know that just from my own circle of friends, for example. I know that they're not utilizing ChatGPT the way that I know it can be used. And for example, the advanced voice chat feature, you can just start chatting to it like a person. It's insane. And I think another mention was not just the relevancy, but also if there's different reading levels or different capabilities, you're able to kind of simplify the information so that it's easier to digest across the board, depending on where you are in whatever topic it is. Sometimes you're strong in history, sometimes you're weak in maths. So you can actually instantly make it relevant and make it easy to grasp for the majority of the individuals in the.
100%. And that's the biggest reason why I'm pro AI, I'm pro tech with understanding the bads and the cons. I talked about this on my TikTok video last night. But overall, we can't ignore it, we can't ban it, we can't block it. But one of the big reasons why we can't do that and we shouldn't do that is the stories I've heard from people that don't learn in typical ways. My husband is one of them. He's dyslexic, and I've taught him how to use AI to say, like, explain this in a simpler way. Even doing things like explain this to me like a middle schooler. I've worked with people and we've gotten all the way down to like explain it to me like a preschooler before, and then the light bulb comes off type of thing. But if you don't know how to do that and that it exists and you don't have access to it, you can't do that. I've heard from so many people that are neurodivergent that have said AI makes me more confident. It makes me feel like I'm more of a professional. I've heard from students saying it makes content easier for me to digest, like what you were just saying.
Yeah, yeah. Even when you're stronger in a topic, it's a good sounding board. A lot of the time, for example, teachers are not always available, right? You've got so many students, you've got so many things you have to do, you've got only so much time in the day. You've got a 24/7 assistant that pretty much knows everything. So even for myself, on topics I understand, sometimes it's good to kind of go back and forth with it just to improve or just kind of explore ideas with. So now that they grasp the what is it, the Revolutionary War, and it's explained to them in Fortnite language, they can then go back and forth with it and just explore it in more detail so that they've got.
Exactly. And it's customized. They can ask the AI questions, specific questions that are specific to where they're at in their learning journey, right? Where we
Yeah,
can't do that a lot of the times in the way that typical classrooms are set up. The teacher only has the ability to answer so many questions.
yeah. Well, thank you for that, Lindy. I think that was an amazing way to end on because I'm sure that there'll be a few people out there that will listen to that, and that will be eye opening for them because I do believe you're onto something there. So, yeah, I appreciate the time, Lindy. Useful information. I learned a lot from it, even just in terms of what you were saying about communities. This is something that we lead with, but the way that you're using it on the other side, not just for sales, but actually for the onboarding and the customer experience, is really insightful. And I think a lot of companies can learn from that and benefit.
Good, good, good. And actually, on that note, I tell companies your community development person on staff, or if you're hiring that out, part of that budget needs to come from sales and marketing
Hmm,
because it is important it's key to sales and marketing. It's also driving usage for your current customers. So there's kind of like it's pronged. It's marketing that leads to sales that leads to customer success. And online community relationship development hits all three of those buckets.
100%. Couldn't agree more. Fantastic, Lindy. Thank
Great.
you.
All right.
Awesome.
Great to meet you. I better go. I've got to hop over to another meeting.
Yeah, I will send this all through
Glad
to
it
you,
worked
Lindy.
out.
We'll stay in touch, Lindy. But
Sounds
awesome.
good.
Really enjoyed it. Catch you in a bit.
Okay. You too. Bye.
Bye.